Hey, everybody. Another podcast coming out here. Jenn Stillman and I sit down and we just randomly talk about everything from why we like podcasts to why it's important to have friends in your life, why good conversations are good, which seems kind of like a no-brainer. And then we kind of veer off into why it's good to be a good, open-minded person. So there isn't... I don't know if there's a lot of meat on this one. We ramble a bit. So enjoy. There's another podcast. We did it again. Enjoy. Hey, Jenn Stillman.
Hi, John.
So we're back again.
Yeah, we're on podcast number 2. I'm number 2. I'm number 2.
Indeed.
It's great.
I think one of the things that we need to clear up right away is people think that this is a little power shop or diesel or truck podcast.
Right. And I would not be here if that were the case.
I bet you would.
Nope. Well, yeah, I would. But I'd just be making fun of you the entire time.
True story.
Not a good podcast. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to diesel, and you don't want to talk about it after hours. So
Right. And the reason I like podcasts is some of my favorite podcasts I've ever heard. So, and this is the other thing we've discovered in the past couple days.
What's that?
Is you and I have very different experiences with podcasts.
We do. I like my last podcast on the left. I like podcasts about murder, mayhem, but they're very cut. They're very clean. They're edited.
Produced.
They're produced.
Right. So
you like...
just the free form,
right?
Kind of what we do
right
here. And I think that there's not a right or wrong there. And I listen to some produced ones too. So I listen to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
Right.
The one with the Dirty Jobs guy.
Mike Rowe.
Have you ever listened to his? They're super short. Another one that I really like that's produced is the Malcolm Gladwell.
I have not heard that one either.
So good. But it's basically they sit down and they write out a script. And they're reading the script. And it's very polished and clean.
Right. So you like both.
Yes, I do like both.
You dig on both. All right.
But my favorite, so if I had to pick a favorite.
Yeah.
I like the Interesting Polished podcast. But my favorite is just a conversational podcast.
Oh.
Because what I think is really neat is...
what comes out of it?
Yeah, because when you take... A politician is what comes to mind when you first get into this. When you watch politicians on TV, it's a very polished, measured answer.
Yes.
Because they're working on like a
script.
10 or 30-second soundbite for a network.
Yes.
So if you sit down with a politician and talk to them for 2 hours and drag them out into the deep water,
right,
you start to understand like what they feel about things, what they think about things. Like you can't be that, like you can't use those canned answers over and over again.
Right.
And one of the things that I've loved about those free-form conversational podcasts is there are a lot of guests that I couldn't even, on various ones, I couldn't even bring up their names or tell you who they were. Yeah. That had an impact on my life on some way.
Right.
There's like a
People
little
have
nugget.
things to say that they don't even know. What they're saying is pure poetry. Right. Earlier tonight, we had Pam in here. You'll hear that podcast at some point. I'm sure you'll get that. Pam, John's wife, she was like, I don't even know what I'm going to say. I don't know how I'm going to react. I'm not a good conversationalist. But then you start talking to her, and the things that she says are beautiful, and they make perfect sense. Right. All you have to do is just get them a talking, and off they go.
Well, you have to figure out what their like little passion or interest in life is, and everybody has one. And one of the cool things in the past few days is when we put out the first podcast and we threw out some stuff on social media, we've gathered up 6, 7, 8,
not
9
we.
guests.
You're being lovely. Not we. You.
Well,
I put it out. No one's like, hey, Jen, you did. You got a solid bunch.
But it's coming in. What's funny about that is there's a lot of people in my life, and this is why I like to do podcasts. Yeah. There's a lot of people. All right, I'll give you a for instance. So.
Example.
you met Ryan
Bean.
Ryan Bean, I love, but Ryan from ATS. Did he ever come around?
Glennis?
Yeah.
Is that it? Oh!
Gillinas. I don't know how to say his last name.
God.
So he's one of the people
wonderfully awkward, but awkward in like the funny way.
Right.
Human being. Not awkward in like, oh my God, we can never speak of this again. He was just a little like, hey dude, nice guy to be like, I know you.
And one of my favorite things about him is I have read more books because he has told me about them.
What?
Yeah. So we'll get together. I don't see him a ton, but I probably see him.
He's ATS, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And
Still?
Yep. He reps a few other companies too. Yeah. So he's like an independent agent.
I can see how people would hire him.
Yeah, he's so good.
He's really interesting.
And we'll get together 2 or 3 times a year. And it's kind of a fun thing where you like compare notes on like, so what are you reading that's cool? Well, I read this book. And one of my favorite things with him is the documentary, The New Basement Tapes. We've talked about this before. So I
downloaded all of it because of you.
So
by
good.
the way. By the way.
And I'm going to circle back to this. Don't let me forget how The New Basement Tapes is important to this.
Okay.
But he shows up.
I'd love to know.
He showed up, I think it was last year or 2 years ago for Valentine's Day. And
here?
Yeah. And we had,
oh my God.
He just randomly is passing through Pennsylvania. He'll plan it out and be like, hey, I'm going to be around. Do you want to hang out? And I'm like, absolutely. I love you, man.
Yeah.
And we're sitting in my office and we're just drinking and catching up. And,
yes.
And we got onto music. And I said, have you heard the new Basement Tapes songs?
Right.
And he's like, dude, it's a documentary. And I'm like, what?
What?
And he's like, yeah,
I didn't know this.
I watched it in my hotel room
Why
the other night.
did you not immediately tell me? You told me to download the Basement Tapes, which I did because I love the lead singer from Mumford and Sons. Mm-hmm. Is it Marcus Mumford?
Yes.
I think that's his name.
Yeah.
And Johnny Depp.
Everybody's in that thing. Like, it's so good.
The guitar on that one. And then there was like, I don't know, like so many great.
My Morning Jacket guy.
Yes, and then there was a female.
That chick, I can't think of her, who has the best voice in the world with no name.
In the world. And you told me, and I loved it immediately. So you didn't get a hold of me and tell me there's a actual video. Great, thanks, John.
But what's funny about that is, I discovered the music, he discovered the documentary, but we were both into the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
And then when I'm like, have you heard the new Basement Tapes? And he's like, yeah. And I'm expecting him to say, I heard it on the internet, the radio or something.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, that documentary is awesome. And I'm like, wait, what?
What?
Documentary? And then the documentary is like amazing. It's called The Lost Tapes. But what's interesting about that is that kind of stuff, I feel like makes your life better.
Yeah.
In ways that like you wouldn't get there by yourself. And do you know why I found the new Basement Tapes?
How?
Because back in maybe 2012, 13-ish.
Yeah.
When you and I were working together at the old shop.
Yes.
There was a very specific day when we always had XM radio. So this is what I always find is funny about things. So I've had XM since it came out in 99 because I'm always like, I like new cool things.
I remember the XM radio fights where I was like, you cannot listen to Lithium. I think it was Lithium.
I always listen to classic vinyl. And
okay, if you listen to it 4 days in a row, they play the same shit. And I was going to murder you and then get arrested for it.
Do you remember the channel you changed it to?
Me, personally?
Yeah.
No. I do remember that I changed it to a specific channel every time, but I don't remember what that was.
I remember one day I came in, I left, and I come back. So I had like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the oldies, like everything on there. And I come back and I'm like, the fuck is on the radio? I think it's like the
Loft. I think it was called the Loft.
It's actually called the Spectrum.
Alrighty.
So the Spectrum has, and I feel like the Loft was probably in there too.
Loft, yeah,
but
I totally
the one in particular is called the Spectrum that you change it to. In a million years, and this is what I find funny. Oh, excuse for the burp.
Coors Light sense.
I had XM for a good decade.
Yeah.
And I would never go to that radio station on my own ever.
Really? All right.
Like, I might have hit the spectrum once and went, and just moved on.
All right.
But you put it on, and I'm stuck listening to it for...
Because it always had Mumford and Sons on there.
And I start to like a lot of these songs.
Wow.
And
the
on the
thickens.
spectrum is where I discovered the new Basement tapes. So they always play...
Really?
They always play this super
I'm
new
waiting
music.
for Thank You, Jen. It hasn't...
Thank you, Jen.
Can I...
Thank you.
It hasn't...
Yes.
Ah, there it
I'm
is.
grateful. But I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, these little interactions, turn you on to something that you're so close to finding.
Oh my God, I know.
But you couldn't get there by yourself.
I know. Which I appreciate, when I shared the thing on Facebook where I was like, hey, get a hold of us if you want to, like, do a podcast, blah, blah, blah. And, like, a couple people liked it, whatever. But yours blew up. And people were like, not even people that I would think to get onto the podcast. But those people were like, hey, I'd like to do it. Hey, I'd like to do it. I did not think, like, in my wheelhouse as somebody that I would like to talk to, but then, like, afterwards, like seeing them being like, I'd like to do it, that is going to be an interesting conversation.
Right.
That is going to be something that I know nothing about, which is the best thing about having this fancy-pantsy equipment and time on our hands is, like, people come in here, we're going to be able to talk to people that, like, they have a background that, like, I have no idea what they're doing. No idea. They're going to come in, they're going to be able to talk, and we're all going to be better for it.
Well, and
better human beings.
So with every person, if they're, I think one of the things that you learn as you get a little bit older, and that's one of the things that I think if you go through and look at all the people who are like, I want to do that, they're a little bit older.
Yeah.
And what happens as you get older, you get a little bit vulnerable. Like, you're willing to be like, oh, this is me. I'll share my shit.
You're vulnerable, but at the same time, you're very, very strong about it because
Right.
you have nothing else to lose.
Because you realize that you're not, I almost don't like the word vulnerable, but it's not a negative. Like, you're not, it's like
Nope.
vulnerable sounds almost like weak, but you're not. You're just like, oh,
You're honest.
This
You
is
get
me.
more honest.
Yes.
The older that you get.
And you're
like
like-
after I had Lucy and, like, I'm in the delivery room and I had my child, like, afterwards I'm like, there is basically nothing that I'm embarrassed about anymore. Like, once you are a parent or have a child, like, you had, like, a kid puke on you in public, like, I'm not embarrassed anymore because, like, this is just how life is. Or some people that you have, like, that I know that, like, they had, like, a serious medical issue happen to them in public, like a heart attack or something like that happened. Like, you get kind of stripped away with your vulnerabilities to the point that now that you're just like, everybody has something that happens to them, and it's completely ridiculous that we're all just like, oh, I'm weird about it. Stop being weird about it.
It's almost
Just-
like double-sided too. So there's the first thing when you're younger where you're like, I am not going to let down the facade of whatever it is.
I'm
like,
so
bad
cool.
stuff doesn't happen to me.
Right.
I got my shit together.
Right.
And I don't get my feelings hurt and all this other stuff. And then the other side of it is you have to live life before you have appreciation for a lot of things. So one of the things that I've learned after having a kid is I used to get really upset in a restaurant, an airplane, a movie theater, wherever it was,
Really?
if
Okay.
a baby would cry.
For that, like, just be like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
what are they
fuck,
doing?
why would you bring
So
a baby
upset.
here?
Right.
And now it's I'm completely the other way, where I'm 100% the other way.
Yep.
Where I'm like, all right, that sucks.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying it sucks for me.
Yeah.
It sucks for them. Like, they thought they could go to dinner, and for whatever reason they brought the kid, whether they couldn't get a sitter, they don't.
Oh, and you, like, see them and you're like,
Oh, I
dude,
get it.
I
get it, man. Like, you're just trying to
man.
have dinner, and
Yeah.
fuck, you
Sorry
haven't been
about
out
your
to dinner
night.
in 8 months since the kid got born, and you're trying to get out.
Yeah.
And so I look at it everything, and same thing on airplanes. Like, I used to get furious if there was a kid around,
Yeah.
and now I'm just like, aw. Like, I get it. Like you start to have a different appreciation for life.
Yeah.
And I feel like as you get older, you're willing to go,
Yeah. I feel like that happens like with any like situation that happens to you where you can commiserate. You can be like you see some like, okay, so I went to the Starbucks in Bradford, and
Wait, there's a Starbucks in Bradford?
Starbucks, yeah, in the Maryland Horn.
Oh.
Okay, you know where that is down.
Thing,
okay, yeah. They have a Starbucks in there. It's run by Pitt, but there's a Starbucks in there.
I'm not a coffee guy, so.
They put whipped cream on things that have caffeine in it, so I'll go there. I went there twice.
My whole thing about coffee is like, you ran water through dirt, and then you drink it. Like, don't do that.
You drink Mountain Dew.
Diet.
Okay, that's worse.
But
that's worse.
I'm the son.
It's worse.
But I'm the son of a guy who drinks coffee 12 months out of the year. Cold or hot.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen my dad in the middle of summer, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's hot, open his thermos up and pour a cup of coffee, and you're like,
yeah, there's nothing, like,
gross.
what you just said to me is completely normal behavior. But yet, you'll walk around with a can of Mountain Dew like it's not goat's piss and still drink it.
I realize I like cold drinks. I just don't like warm drinks.
Okay, you can get an iced coffee. Okay, so the Starbucks. So I walk in, and this woman behind the counter she could not have been more hungover if she was any more hungover. If she was a decibel more hungover, she would have been deceased.
If she was more hungover, she wouldn't have been at work.
No, if she was just like a click, a scotch, a sprinkle more hungover, she would have been a dead person. But she was at work. Girlfriend got herself up and like walked herself into Starbucks and was just like, what do you want? Like, she was so despondent and so upset. And the thing was that, like, if I didn't go through that similar experience at one point in my life,
you wouldn't have appreciation.
I would have been a dickhead.
Right.
I would have been like, what is your problem? Make me my whipped cream bullshit.
Yep.
But because I had been through several times the similar experience was just like, your noises taste like anger. I could not have been so nice to her.
Right.
So the same thing like becomes the same way when you're a parent. When you're a parent, like you see, they don't even have to have a child with them.
No.
You just can tell. It's just like, you're suffering.
I feel like you get a better ability to put things in perspective too.
Yeah.
Whereas
lifelong.
You go into Starbucks and you have a hungover, whatever that person's called, that makes your coffee, and you're upset because they're not whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a fucking cup of coffee.
It's a cup of coffee.
They're not doing brain surgery.
No.
You're just like, oh.
They eventually made it.
I'm getting least 3 more cups of coffee today and 10 more tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll make my own in 20 minutes.
It's not the biggest deal in the world. Yeah.
Fucking vanilla cream. I swore. Damn it.
But
I didn't make that long.
What I started to say was, and we do this. We're driving down the highway and we see a little fucking watermelon stand. And we veer off, and then next thing you know, we're driving around out in the back roads. But what I started to say, going way back to about podcasts, is Ryan Gelinas.
Is that how you say it?
Gelinas.
I'm gonna go on record and say Glennis. Is he coming in to do it?
Eventually.
Okay, great.
Maybe
on
when
the
I
record,
go to Denver, I'll take a mic and we'll do it
That's
out there.
how I say it.
Anyways.
He can yell at me when he gets here.
We will get him to pronounce. Oh, he's coming for Valentine's Day. That was what we were trying to work out. So anyway.
What? All right, go ahead.
Anyways, 2 things about him.
Yeah.
So the first is all the shared similar experiences, and like you're like, read this, this is good, or listen to this, or listen to this. He's kind of in tune with the same kind of stuff that I'm interested in.
Yeah. All right.
But one of the top 3 nights of my life was shared with him.
Where?
So we were in some Mexican beachfront type resort.
Name a city, because you have been everywhere.
It could be like Cozumel or
Oh, because you did get to go on the cruise.
Yeah. Well,
you guys got to go on the cruise.
So we're down at this resort. It's like an all-inclusive resort. And anybody that knows me knows that I like to go hard a lot. Like,
you pretend like you don't, and then all of a sudden a switch fucking flip. I did it again.
Other
a
guy
switch
comes
flips,
out.
and then like Johnny Goodtime comes out, and then we'll see you at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
So
John.
here's what happens. So we basically have drank all day. Like it's what you do at those resorts. You just kind of hang out by the pool. We go to dinner. We have dinner. Have a really good dinner, and then I'm not. I can't remember now. It's been too long, but we're walking around, and there's sort of a group starting to form.
Of.
Just so it's all industry people, like people that have businesses similar to ours, or manufacturers.
Was Judd there?
Yeah, he was, but he wasn't there for this.
He wasn't there for that group. Okay.
So everybody's starting to kind of gel together. So it's like all the people who didn't want to go to bed at 10 o'clock are still out.
Not
drinking.
Pam. Pam's done.
So I'll tell you.
She's in bed.
I'll tell you when Pam tapped out. So we're walking around.
That woman is a goddess. When she decides to tap out, I'm with her. I trust her.
We're walking around, and this little group of probably 10 to 15-ish people are starting to kind of gel together. Like everybody's drinking and talking, and everybody's talking, and not
just complete bullshit.
Well, they're not talking business like, "Hey, I can do this for you, and you can do this for me," but sort of commiserating and starting to get into like theory of business and what do you think about this?
That's not.
And we get over towards this big hot tub thing that's besides the pool.
Okay.
And somebody says we should get in the hot tub.
You shouldn't you shouldn't add alcohol to a really hot temperature water and then sit in it. That's a bad idea.
I test this theory all the time. I can do it.
Really?
Yes.
I don't think you actually can.
Oh,
you think that you can. All right. No, let's see how the story plays out, and you'll prove me wrong.
So there I am, wearing a t-shirt, jeans, my boots, because I'm in Mexico. Why wouldn't I be wearing that? And I've come a long way. I do wear shorts now. But we get over to this hot tub, and somebody has this idea, and it very well could have been me. It could have been anybody in the group. We should get in the hot tub.
Yeah.
And we had this giant bucket of beer that somebody had bought, like this big 2-handle like drum of beer.
Oh my God.
And what do you do if you're in your jeans, your shirt, and your boots?
Take off your boots and get in the hot tub?
Exactly.
Okay. Well,
and that's when Pam's
I
like,
win. Ding, ding, ding.
Pam's like, I'm fucking out.
I'm gonna go to bed.
I'm going to bed.
That was a correct decision.
She hung around for a little while, and she's like, I'm out.
No, that was a good.
So
that was a good choice.
We get into the hot tub. And Ryan and I, there's all these. I didn't.
Did you at least take the shit out of your pockets? Like I see you just fully taking off your work boots.
I gave Pam all my pocket contents.
Okay.
And she went to bed.
All right. I see you just like taking off, like and just wandering.
We get into this hot tub, and Ryan and I are like on opposite ends of this hot tub, and it's probably like as long as this table. And everybody's kind of sitting along the side. Some people are just putting their feet in because they didn't want to get their jeans wet. Like God. And we start having this long conversation, and I couldn't even tell you exactly what it was.
This is a lead up to saying that you were sitting next to a man in a hot tub.
No, it's not even. This
and
is
talking about your feelings.
No, we start talking about business theory and what we think that like this is and that is, and all of a sudden I realized like at one point, and I'm shit faced. Like let's not. Pretend.
Yeah, no, good.
So
I'm glad that you can
like,
admit.
15, 20 people sitting around the outside.
Yeah.
Just listening. It's just Ryan and I going back and forth.
Really? Okay.
And every once in a while somebody would like have something that they would bring up and talk about for a second. It wasn't even a chirp, but like it was a conversation, but we were like going back and forth.
Yeah.
So at some point we get kicked out of there because like at midnight's quiet time you have to leave.
Weird.
So then we decided to take our bucket of beer and we walked down to this little bungalow thing that's besides the ocean.
Okay.
And the group got a little bit smaller, so we're down to like 8 to 10 people.
All right.
And it's starting to rain a little bit.
Still enough to make mayhem. Yeah.
And we're like, let's go in there, and we drank for another couple hours.
Was
great.
You're committed.
So There was another guy that said he wants to do the podcast that's in the industry that I love. His name's Chad. He was down there.
I saw that, yeah.
And he's an awesome dude.
Okay.
But anyways, he's down there and we're all kind of continuing this drunken business philosophy, how things should be. And
I love how you remember this.
So wait, it gets better.
Difficult. All right.
So it finally gets to be 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning-ish. It's kind of raining, sprinkling.
Christmas.
Not super hard.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, geez, we have to get to bed. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right. Well, I grab a few beers out of the bucket of beers we had, and I walk down to the beach because there's all these beach chairs out on the beach.
For some reason, I think I remember this story. Yeah, but keep going.
I walk down there and sit down there because I said to myself, well, I'll tell you what I said to myself. So Ryan comes down. Everybody else kind of goes to bed.
Yeah.
Ryan comes down. He's like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, dude, we're in Mexico. It's like 85 degrees out.
Yeah.
And there's a thunderstorm rolling in off the ocean.
You're not wrong. That's good thinking.
I'm going to sit here and drink some fucking beers and let it rain on me.
That's good thinking, Matthew McConaughey. You McConaughey'd out. You're like, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to watch this thunderstorm. All right.
And he's like,
I like it.
Yeah, I'm going to do that too.
I like that.
So we sat out there until, I don't know what time. I have no idea. 4 or 5 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And we talked about everything. From life to how you feel about this, how you feel about kids. And I always thought like...
Just you and Ryan.
Yeah. And it was like the most... We're both drunk. You're in Mexico in this beautiful place which kind of lets down your guard and lets you be like whatever.
Yeah. I like that.
And
I like the lead into that story too.
I wish I had a recording of that conversation.
I don't.
I do.
I don't. Because I feel like that it would be lost in translation. You'd be Bill Murray all over the place. Like, you need to have that memory in your brain where you know what you talked about, where, like, if we were to listen to it later, it would be like, what the frig are you talking about? Also, the lead-in where you could have just been like, so Ryan and I were sitting on a beach at 3 a.m, just him and I watching the thunderstorm roll in, and I'd be like, what happened?
And I'll tell you why I feel like this ties into podcasts. Like, I've always wished that I had a recording. This is like years and years and years ago. I don't know how many years ago this was.
Okay.
But I've always wished that I had a recording of that podcast so I can go back and listen. Because I was clearly out of my fucking mind that night.
Right. But...
And when you get to that point, you just start speaking like truth.
Yeah.
And then somebody else tells you something, and then you're like, I'll tell you something, and then you go back and forth.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happens in podcasts a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is great about these conversations, and I've had it happen in podcasts I listen to, are completely random people who give you this little nugget of something that helps you in your life.
Yeah.
It's something they learned, something a friend said, something their dad used to say.
Something they don't even deem important at all to them. But and to then, you and the listener, or whoever happens to be in the realm will listen to it and they'll just be like, they'll think back on it.
They'll never remember thought of it that way before.
Yeah, they'll take that shit, and that's really important to them.
And that, there's one podcast in particular that I was listening to. I couldn't even tell you the name of it or the guest.
Oh.
That's
sad.
I will just find...
I'd like to know.
It's not sad.
Well, I'd like to know.
It was like some weird business podcast, and
you listen to things that I don't listen to.
I am like a throw a dart at something and give it a try sort of guy.
Right.
So last night, have you ever heard of Anderson East?
Nope.
Okay. So going back to stuff I hear on Spectrum.
Okay.
So they play this new music all the time. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite things to do is if I hear something that I'm like, oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
I will put it in YouTube because everything's on YouTube anymore.
It is.
Or even iTunes if they're in iTunes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll get in my truck and I'll play the song that I just heard that I like.
Oh.
And then I'll just let it play all their other songs.
Really? All right.
And just be like,
not a
all
bad
right,
idea.
Let's give this a try.
Not a bad idea.
And that's how I become fans of these random people. You might have to get through a couple songs that are like, meh. Mm-hmm. But every once in a while you'll find a nugget. Mm-hmm. What kills me is that I Wish I Was song by the Avett Brothers. I always want to put an R in there. That never got popular. But it's amazing.
Really?
Like, it never made it to radio.
There are a couple songs by a couple artists that, like, are really big, or people that know, and I'm just like,
good.
Like, what about this song? And they're like, what is that song again?
Right.
Yeah.
But I'll do the same thing with podcasts. So I will just randomly, especially if I'm on a long trip, and I've made it through all the popular ones and I've caught up and whatever.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of search for whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll just be like, oh, fuck it, I'll listen to that.
Yeah.
So I was going through a particular time in business and everything else. And I'm kind of trying to, like, control everything. And I heard this podcast, and like I said, this is what I love about this. I couldn't even tell you who these two people were. I wish I'd give them credit, but there was a host, and the guest says,
Yeah.
I learned a lot from learning how to fly a helicopter.
Explain.
He says, one of the things that you have to learn when you're trying to get your helicopter license is you go up in the air, and they put you in, I think it's a flat spin. So basically, they get you up, and the helicopter's dropping, and as much as you grab the controls and you're, like, muscling it up and down and trying to do everything you can, you cannot get control of the helicopter.
So what do you do?
There is, built into the system, an auto-correcting feature. And all you have to do is have the courage to just let go of the controls and let everything center. And he says, and that is the same thing with life.
Oh, God.
Occasionally you'll get into a situation where you are just white-knuckling.
Completely losing control.
Right.
Right.
And you have to be able to have the courage and the confidence to go, I'm just going to let go here. Like, I can't manhandle this situation. And that flies in the face of everything that you've ever been told.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to buckle down and grunt this out.
Especially when you're a parent, because you have the absolute need to take control of everything. Because you're like, I have to control this. I have to do this. If I don't, I'm failing.
Right.
If, like, you can't just let it fall or spin out. You just can't.
And that singular, that 30 to 50 seconds of audio that I happened across for no random reason changed how I approached my daily life.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, before I was like, I work all day, I come home, I flip open my laptop, I work till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And finally I'm like, okay.
Just free spin.
I need to take
go to bed for 2 hours.
Yeah. And and whether or not I would have got there on my own without that.
Yeah.
You can kind of see it. You can kind of put these little pin marks in, like, oh yeah, that changed the way I thought about this.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about doing a podcast. And that's what I really hope that we kind of
what you like about, like, talking to people.
Right.
And what we talked about last podcast is that you can't just, like, have somebody come over and be like, sit, like, a foot away from me and talk about your life. A podcast makes people more aware that they're speaking the words that they're saying, and, like, makes things more real, I guess. So when you have somebody, like, not so much like doling out, like, life information, but they're thinking of things interesting to say, they'll pull things out of nowhere that they don't think is important, but they think is just, like, interesting to talk about. It will pop up that, like, that's really good advice.
And it's the kind of thing that, like, that's what I grew up with, a bedrock of what I base my life on.
Yeah.
And you just throw it out as,
I was just talking bullshit.
I always put my socks on every morning.
Yeah.
But there's a person somewhere that, and I know this is boiling it down to nothing.
Put my socks on.
Yeah, when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is put my socks on so I have to walk on the cold floor.
Yeah.
And there's somebody else that's like, I was always taught that I should only put my socks on exactly before I put my shoes on so the bottoms don't get dirty.
Right.
And
it just makes them think about...
You realize, like, oh, there's another way to do this.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
which is what makes me excited about the people that you have coming in for this podcast, is just like the people who wanted to do it. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I don't really have like a whole lot of like intellectual questions like off the bat that I want to ask them, but I just want to have a conversation that you wouldn't normally have without a microphone shoved in your face.
Well, you couldn't just have it, like, you can't have it at a party. You couldn't have it
No.
at work. You couldn't have it.
No, because if you ask these people these questions without some kind of prerequisite, it's rude, or it's out of nowhere. They're not going to give you a truthful answer.
What's really funny about when you have a microphone right here is, like, just like with Pam tonight. Mm-hmm. Normally, if you would have asked Pam a question, she
wander away, make some dinner.
Yeah, like but you don't ever get an I don't know. Mm-hmm. You get something. Mm-hmm. You, like, I don't know what the magic is that happens.
Yeah.
But when you say, why do you feel this, or why do you do this, or this is interesting, why is that?
And I'm always
then they just start talking and
very inquisitive when I talk to people, and I feel like not rude, but I feel like intrusive, where I don't want to know like incredibly personal details, but I have questions.
Right.
I have questions, and I want to know like about the things, like your process, your life, like what has gotten you to be this human being that you are today. So
why do you make the choices that you do? And what's funny is when you start looking at like people's lives a little bit, you start to realize, like, oh, I understand exactly why you're kind of a dick.
But then that's another double-edged sword right there, because as we were talking about last podcast, like when we dropped off the conspiracy theories, like you start delving into people, you start getting the nitty-gritty a little bit, where you're just like, you actually believe.
Right.
But and then if you're a cognizant human being, you can actually have a conversation with them about, like, okay, explain to me why. But other times, just like yelling at one another, be like, I don't understand how you're thinking the things that you're thinking.
But you have to, so, I wish I remember the name of the book. It just came out, and I've read just the tiniest bit of it. It's like the 12 Laws of Life or Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
And he breaks down why, like, the Columbine people did what they
Do you
did.
think that's a conspiracy theory?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not even a little bit.
Okay. Because you had mentioned conspiracy theories earlier, and I'm like, what is a conspiracy theory? Because I only have the great one, the one. But I don't really have anything when it comes to anything else.
Yeah,
so
and I feel like
it's all opinion, pretty much.
You kind of... I understand why people go conspiracy theory. Like,
Why?
I understand...
Because they can't accept reality, because that's too incredibly wild and detrimental to their system.
It's not as fun.
I think, no, yeah, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, all right, okay.
So,
But
we'll just go JFK.
we're going to go with the great one.
Let's boil it down.
The great one.
Let's boil it down to the simplest official story.
Okay.
A crazy guy
Yes.
who was trained as I don't want to say sniper, but he was obviously...
Marksman.
Mm-hmm. Gets up in a tower and pulls off...
Three of the greatest shots on Earth. And then gets back downstairs and eats his lunch.
When you break it down, though, when you look at it, like, there's been people that have pulled off those same shots. They're not impossible shots.
Who?
There's been a few different shows and like documentaries
Okay.
where they actually set up the same scenario.
All right.
And it is humanly possible to do that. Likely? No. Possible? Yes.
I think that's actually why it's a conspiracy theory. Because everything that's conspiracy theory is like, this is possible. Mm-hmm. But is it actually applicable? Like, is it actually a thing that could really, really happen in real life? Like, if it were completely false, then it would just be a fallacy. It wouldn't be a conspiracy theory. It would just be wrong. It'd be false. Right. A conspiracy theory is something that's just like, it could.
But when you what gets weird with the JFK one is when you start peppering in the thing like the bullet that showed up on the gurney beside JFK.
What?
You don't know about this?
No.
Right.
Also, P.S. on this one, Matt said he would do it. Husband, Matt Zurat, he said he would do the podcast. They wrote a song about the JFK assassination. Matt and I have gotten into the conspiracy theory a little bit, but we keep it light because it's the wives and the husbands, so we don't yell at each other.
What was the reasoning that they did that? That seems like a very the blue thing, a topic to...
I think Matt is because I own the Oliver Stone box set. Mm-hmm. This thing is enormous. It's like 12 movies, and that is a dangerous, dangerous man who just somehow got money and was able to produce movies. But in one of the movies, it's like, it's not Fear and Loathing. That's another thing. But it's the Natural Born Killers, it's Born on the 4th of July, and then it's the JFK movie. So I let Matt borrow it.
I'm going to put something up so we go back to Fear and Loathing and like
Fear and Loathing?
Yes, we can't.
We will go back to Fear and Loathing.
Keep going with where you're going, but I want to go back to that.
But so I let Matt borrow the JFK, the Oliver Stone, and then after that, because he just used it for kind of research, because they already had this song in the works, and then he went off with it. And then they also introduced, Trisha and Matt introduced me to Parkland, which is a really solid movie. I really like that movie. And then, like I said, we haven't really gotten into the nitty gritty of it whatsoever. But
so this is kind of still tying in. This is exactly what I want to do with the podcast. Mm-hmm. And I said the first one. This is just guilty pleasure for me. Mm-hmm. Because I want a reason to get Matt to sit down and break down how it happens. Mm-hmm. Because Matt's music to me, like I'm trying to put together the math problem in my head. Mm-hmm. The kind of music Matt makes doesn't seem like it would line itself up with the JFK anything.
Right.
And you're talking about two completely detached generations. Mm-hmm. And this is what I was saying. It's even the same thing as like the kids kicking the seat, and you don't understand it. Like I would love to figure out what's the how do you go from there to there? Mm-hmm. Like what is it like? Let's hear the process of how you came up with the JFK assassination, and then I feel strongly enough that I need to write a song about this, and then how do you come up with a song? Where do the words come from? Mm-hmm. How do you know what melody to there's so many the questions could go on forever.
Right.
And I don't want it to be perceived as a knock where I just want it to be I am super curious about this.
I am super curious. I'm curious
so wanting to understand that.
I am. I'm super curious about everything, and I feel like sometimes people not take offense, but they get put off by it because I'm actually really interested. I'm not asking questions to be a dick about it and be like, so what does that mean?
And this is exactly goes back to what you were saying earlier about you can't get it unless you're in a podcast, because if you were to say to Matt over beers, so
where'd you come up with that?
What's the deal with this JFK thing?
It feels very I'm
he's
fronting.
Immediately go defensive.
Right, defense mode.
They're busting my balls.
Where if it's a podcast, where if it's something where I really honestly want to hear your progression, that is different. It's not.
I feel like the dynamic changes completely too, because I feel like when you're in a social setting, you're constantly on the defensive.
Yeah. Because no one wants to know your opinion for anything good when you're out and about. No one wants that for tell people what you think. This information is just going straight to me for my bias and my shitty opinion, not going to anywhere else. Where if you do a podcast or it's out to anyone else, now you have your chance. Here it is.
Right.
I'm not asking you to be a dickhead. I'm asking you for serious. Please educate me because I have no idea.
You might have stumbled onto something perfect there.
I always do.
Saying things to a crowd or a podcast is a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's 100 people in front of you or 1,000,
Mm-hmm.
you can almost find some security in going, there's 5 people that'll get me here.
Yeah.
Fuck the rest of these guys.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're one-on-one...
One-on-one, you're defending yourself to one person.
Right, there's
and
a
you're on the
gamble.
complete defense.
There's a gamble. You can't play the odds that, like, they'll kind of get me unless you really, really are in sync.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you are so steadfast in your ideas and your opinion that there is no reckoning. None reckoning. And you just spout it off. If you have any, like, in your argument, you get defensive immediately. But when you are put on, like, a public forum where you can be like, there's going to be a couple people out there that listen to this and maybe they agree with it, like that kind of thing. But honestly, like, when I ask questions or when I meet people or whatever, like, I seriously want to know what your thought of process is.
Right.
Like, I'm not being a dick about it. I honestly want to know.
And then if you dig a little bit deep enough, you realize, okay, one of two things. If it's somebody you disagree with, you go, okay, your thinking is flawed because you're basing it on a premise that I don't share. Or you're crazy.
Right.
Like,
But-
some people are just viewing reality in a warped sense, and then you realize, like, oh, you do not see people as good. So there's no way that you could ever go, this is a good person that made a bad choice.
Right.
All people are fucked.
Right.
Like, and then you realize, like, oh, okay.
And having a conversation with somebody that you disagree with, honestly, people do not recognize. I don't want to generalize and be like, all people don't. Some people don't realize what a friggin' gift that is. If you don't agree on a topic, having a conversation with somebody on the opposite end of it is the greatest gift you could ever be bestowed. You get another opinion, you get arguments, they have facts that you don't have.
Right.
Don't keep everything directly in your line of thought. Reach out, get other opinions. Because there are other opinions out there that you don't even know about. And all of a sudden, like, oh my God, I absolutely had no idea. Like, I think it comes back to being like a parent. Like, I have a teenager. Like, I need to know, like, what are her friends thinking? What are they doing? I had no idea that, like, people are like, oh yeah, people die from heroin all the time. I'm just like, heroin?
Right.
That's a thing?
That's in your world?
That's, people do that, like, as a real thing that they think is a good idea. You have to, like, get the opposite opinion of, like, I'm just like, that's horrible, don't touch it. And then other people are like, well, they do, though. Why?
The other weird thing that's happened is people have become very, like, cliquey or teamy. And that's one of the things that drives me a little bit nuts. And what you were just saying a minute ago, like, I enjoy nothing more than somebody who disagrees with me on anything. And I don't really want to argue with them, but I want to, like,
I want to have a conversation.
I want to poke them a little bit
Yeah.
until they start telling me what they feel.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people, and if you can get somebody that's going to actually do that, because there's so many people that are just on, like, team politics right now is a huge one. So you have team left or team right.
Right.
And they don't even care.
Yeah.
It's just left or right.
Yeah.
There's not like and at the end of the day, when most people sit down, you're usually, like, most rational people are kind of down the middle.
Kind of down the middle.
Like, you kind of have to...
There are radically Republican people who will agree with Democrats because it's just a topic that just makes sense. And they'll both agree. Be like, some Democrats also will be like, a Republican point of view, they'll be like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, to just completely disregard an argument because somebody disagrees with you, that doesn't help a single person. And you have to listen. You have to honestly be like, do I disagree with this or not? If you do, then
Why?
disagree with it.
Right.
Congratulations to you. If you agree with it, then be like, okay, where do we go from here? But you just have to listen. It's so difficult, though, to actually admit being like, I may have made a mistake. That phrase, I may have made a mistake, is so hard for people to do.
Well, is there anything in your life that you are...
So much. All of it.
100% completely infallible and sure of?
Yes.
All
One
right.
thing.
What is it?
Ketchup. It's a horrible, pitiful condiment.
All right.
It should be thrown away.
I completely disagree, but
I won't even listen to your argument on this one.
this is a no-go thing
No.
for you.
No. I've tested.
Right.
I've done research. I have talked to people. This is all bullshit. Ketchup is awful. Don't eat it. Don't touch it. Don't talk about it.
Not even on French fries?
No! Do you know how many other condiments there are for French fries? Ranch, mustard, aioli, mayonnaise, vinegar, pesto, marinara,
Wing sauce. That's
wing
one of my
sauce.
favorites.
Do you want the plethora of wing sauces they offer at the corner bar? Because there's like 50.
All right. Let's dial this back a little bit.
I'm just saying.
What is the other thing in your life that you're 100% sure about? Is there something?
I don't know. Not off the top of my
There's
head.
very few things other than, I think it comes down to I 100% universally love my kid. There's nothing that could sway that.
Right.
I might think she's an asshole at some point.
Right.
But I'll still
But
love
I'll
her
still be able to admit
unconditionally.
that my kid is wrong.
Right.
She's
But
wrong.
Everything,
I'm wrong.
Everything else in life is like this moving meter.
Pendulum.
Yeah, where you're like,
Yeah.
all right. So, I mean, even when you get into things like, I hate to even like say it, but like when you get into abortion, it is so situational and subjective.
Yes.
And anybody that is 100% one side or the other of a topic,
Yeah.
you have to go,
You can't do it.
you're really not even thinking about this.
You just can't. You just can't outwardly.
And it's,
Aside from ketchup,
okay.
you
we'll
can't.
let's just agree that ketchup is awful for all
It's
humans.
really, really terrible. It's devil piss water. Anyway, you just can't 100% agree on this is terrible under any circumstances. You have
Or even to not take it to something that's so controversial, you just go into like healthcare. Mm-hmm. And when you start talking about healthcare, you're like, all right. There's two extremes. There's the people that think government should provide healthcare, and then there's the people that just don't. Mm-hmm. And there are those people that are way out on either side of those spectrums. And then I feel like the rest of the world kind of falls in the middle, where they're like, this is really fucking expensive. I don't think people should get sick.
right.
But I don't know.
And here's the thing, you can have okay, so here's my thing when it comes to the political environment and making decisions when it comes to the vast majority of people. You can have an opinion. I have an opinion. You have an opinion. Everybody has an opinion on what's right, wrong, this, that, what should be, what should be, what should be. When you are a politician, you have to take in the collective good of the people. You have to be situational. You have to take in well, maybe this happened, maybe this happened, maybe this didn't happen, maybe this will happen in the future. Your job basically is to represent people and take into every single thing what could possibly happen. So you have to be open and listen and respond accordingly. Mm-hmm. You can't have this is just how it is on anything. Really, that's just kind of how I do my day to day. Again, having a teenager. I can't be you can't possibly get a grade below 70. Well, maybe
It's a possibility.
It's a possibility. Maybe something happened. Maybe her teacher was out. She didn't get her homework turned in on time. Maybe she was sick for 2 weeks with the flu and she didn't get her stuff. There are situations that happen. So I think with any any kind of big, vast, I'm in charge role that you have to take in different situations. You can take a very hard stance on things. This is wrong. That's great. Do that. Please be a voice of what you believe in. But listen to other voices that are coming in. Just give that one voice just a chance just to talk to you. And just listen. Please.
Do you think there's anybody who, whether it's business or politics or education or any facet of life, who is, what's the word I want to use, purposely trying to do bad?
Probably.
But out of most people that you know.
That I know?
Yeah.
No.
Like, there's people that are doing things for reasons that you think are crazy and maybe are.
Not that I personally know.
But in their own head, that's what I'm trying to say. When you start to peel the onion back a little bit, you're like, I completely don't agree with that. But I can kind of see where you're coming from.
Not in my life.
It's wrong. Like, you're wrong-headed about this. But
I understand why you're doing it.
I get it, yes.
I get it. No. In my life,
because I feel like everybody comes from that place of, I'm trying to do the right thing. Good intention? Yes.
Yeah, well, the road to hell was paved with good intentions.
Right. And that's a saying because of something.
Right. But, like, in my life, like, no. Everyone that I have around me is, like, level-headed enough to see both sides of the argument, which is what I really adore, that they're able to do that. And
they're objective.
And that's really, like, because, like, it's not that I don't want the hard opinions of people who are completely out of their minds. Because I'd love to hear it.
I would love if we could somehow come up with, like, if we could figure out anybody that gets angry about anything we might say on the podcast and be like, all right, please, you have 20 minutes. Please come in.
Yeah.
You have 20 minutes. Nobody's going to say a word.
Yep.
State your case.
Yeah.
Like, why are you mad? Like, what is it that you completely disagree with?
Yeah.
Please. I'd love to hear it. Like, tell me why I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Like, break it down for me.
Yeah. Again,
I would love to hear it.
So many questions. Like, I'll listen to
all right,
it.
Go ahead. And then go, all right. And then objectively be like, okay, so what about this? And then just let them explain their side.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the hardest things that's going on right now. It's like, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. Well,
yell. Scream. Type.
I don't like this politician because of this. Well, they're no better than this politician because of this.
Right.
And you're like, well, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about two different things that aren't. Like, you're just trying to one up worse. Like, and that's not getting us to a good place at all.
I like the whole, like, right wrong conversation gets lost in the muck.
Right.
And it's just like, there's clearly a right and wrong. Like, don't be a completely radical, like, Nazi supporter. That's wrong. Clearly. Like, don't be a horrible, like, don't beat somebody up and then kill them and rape them. That's wrong. But, like, and then, like, other people are like, whoa, and then, like, everyone that starts screaming at each other. And then it becomes, like, this big mucky conversation.
Right.
Where it's just like, no, there is still right and wrong. There is still wrong, right. But you have to listen to people when it comes to policy and stuff like that. You have to, there is still very clear right and wrong. And then it comes to, like, okay, yes, that's very clear. That's wrong. That's right. That's it. But in the middle...
See, this is where I disagree with what you're saying just a little bit.
What?
I understand what you're saying.
What?
But
Get out.
I don't think right and wrong is always or ever that clear. And this is one of the things I felt a little bit bad about with our last podcast. That I just gave you the finger, like
you did.
I'm gonna mansplain this, but
no, you did. Yeah.
But but what's funny about that is people brought that up, and then you realize you do it, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't do that. But what I was gonna say was, we got into the Me Too stuff and all that kind of stuff last time, and when it was all over, I'm like, oh shit, I didn't really say what I meant.
I know, I thought the same thing.
And what I
But also we were like beers and wines deep.
But what I meant was, yes, there's awful things that happen that should never happen. But there is also some personal responsibility that comes along with it.
Okay.
And what I was going to say is there's never a clear right or wrong. There's people that are willing to stand up for what's wrong. And then there's people that are willing to take advantage of what's perceived to be right.
Okay.
In the lack of responsibility.
Okay.
So
I get what you're like. There are people who will take advantage of any situation.
Right.
That will just pick up on it and be like.
You could come right out and say, it is 100% wrong to kill another person.
Yes.
Is it?
Personally, I will go on record and say, if anyone did anything to my child, I would murder them in cold blood in the middle of the street, and I would have no, feel-bads about it.
Right. Or
I'm okay with that.
Let's just say you're sitting there, the only weapon you have is a pistol, and somebody is assaulting a family member to the point where you're like, oh my God, they're going to kill him, and you could shoot him.
There's actually laws about that.
But what I'm saying is,
I just went to a thing.
All of a sudden you went from being like, is it wrong to kill people? Yeah, you should never kill somebody. To going, sometimes.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? And I feel like everything is like that. And not everybody has the rational ability to go, sometimes, and know what that sometimes is.
Yes.
And then when you hear about the sometimes, you don't always have the context to know the situation.
Right. Or the state of mind is to be like, okay, I'll listen to you.
Right.
It's immediate like, no. There are some things though that are completely wrong without any kind of context.
All right.
Like any kind of abuse towards another person. Like any kind of you just beat the shit out of somebody for no reason. Rape, wrong.
Where does abuse start and stop? That's, again, we're getting into the...
Accosting a person out of nowhere. Okay. Like, they're your spouse, or they're just walking on the street, you punch them in the face, or they're just sitting across the dinner table and you throw a cup at their face.
Right. But then you get back to... This is where I always get weird about this. I agree 100%. So if you're walking down the street and somebody punches you, it's assault.
Yeah.
If you're walking down the street and somebody pushes you, is that assault?
Yeah, but you have the option to be like, asshole, and keep walking.
Right.
And then, okay.
But if they pushed you by accident.
Oh, God.
Like, all of a sudden there's all these layers where you can't be universal. But if you told me...
And this is now politics, and guess what? We are not.
Right.
Politicians.
But what I'm saying is...
Because we did not get elected to represent this bullshit. Like, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody that I was just like, I don't know. I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer.
Nobody does.
I did not put myself in a position where I need to have the answer, that I have to be so forthright on everything. I have my beliefs on my life and the people in my life that I will stick to. I also know the law. I'm very law abiding. I will those hippie festivals that I go to. They're like, check in and check out when you go to your thing, and checking out is a farce. You don't have to check out.
Nobody
you just go get drunk.
Fuck
I
that
check
noise.
out. I check out. I go to my thing and I check out. I follow the rules.
Whoa.
I follow every single rule. I do it because there has to be some people who follow order, and that is me. But I don't know what the answer is. The answer to me is be a good person for the love of God. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, and be willing to, at the very least, consider the other side's position or opinion. Because this is one of the things, how many times have you ever had your mind changed in your life after somebody broke down something for you and you're like...
Quite a bit.
Oh.
I will always listen.
Right.
Which is, again, back to the podcast, like, you bring people in that, like, I don't like so much. Not that I don't like, it's just, like, I don't know where they're coming from. I'm not there. Like, I don't like what they do just because I don't know anything about it.
Right.
It's not anything I'm opposed to. It's just something that I'm just like, what is he saying again? And then they'll talk and be like, oh my God, I love it. I want to do it all day.
Right.
So that's the good part about bringing, like, to listening to different people's, like, perspective, which I'm always a big fan of listening. Always.
Well, Miss, on that note.
What time is it?
It's late.
Oh, we did it again!
We've just been rambling. So,
we need to cut off the last 20 minutes of this conversation.
At least.
At least.
I'm not going to. Because I'm lazy.
No!
All right. Well,
thank you, John. We'll be here next Wednesday.
More people soon.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, John.
See ya.